What if Daenerys raised Jon Snow as her heir after learning the truth? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The crypts of Winterfell stretch deep beneath the ancient castle, stone kings and queens watching from their tombs as two living dragons stand before them. Jon Snow paces between the carved figures of his ancestors, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. Daenerys Targaryen watches him closely, her violet eyes sharp in the flickering torchlight. The weight of what he must tell her presses down on his shoulders like a mountain. "There's something you need to know," Jon says, his voice barely above a whisper. The words echo off the stone walls, seeming to wake the dead Starks from their eternal slumber. He stops pacing and turns to face her, steel gathering in his resolve. "About who I really am." Daenerys steps closer, her silver hair catching the light from the torches mounted on the crypt walls. She can see the torment in his dark eyes, the same look he wore when he bent the knee to her. But this is different. This cuts deeper than politics or allegiance. "Sam told me tonight," Jon continues, his hands clenching at his sides. "About my birth, about my parents." He takes a shuddering breath. "I'm not Ned Stark's bastard. I never was." The Dragon Queen goes still, every instinct she possesses suddenly alert. She has seen this look before, in Meereen when slaves brought her news that would change everything. In Dragonstone when ravens arrived bearing tidings of war. Her heart begins to beat faster. "My father wasn't Ned Stark," Jon says, each word carved from stone. "It was your brother, Rhaegar Targaryen." He meets her eyes directly, no longer the bastard seeking approval, but something else entirely. "My mother was Lyanna Stark. They were married in secret, before the gods. That makes me Aegon Targaryen," Daenerys breathes, the name falling from her lips like a prayer and a curse combined. The torchlight flickers across her face as the revelation hits her. "You're Aegon Targaryen, sixth of his name." Jon nods, unable to speak. He watches her face for any sign of what comes next. Rage, perhaps. Fear. The cold calculation he has seen her turn on enemies from Slaver's Bay to King's Landing. He braces himself for the fury of dragons, for the end of everything they have built together. But Daenerys surprises him. A smile spreads slowly across her features, not the cruel smile she wore when crucifying masters in Meereen, but something warmer, something almost wondering. She takes another step toward him, close enough now that he can smell the scent of dragonfire in her silver hair. "My nephew," she says softly, and the word carries no threat, no challenge to his legitimacy. Instead, it sounds like welcome, like relief. "You're my family." Jon stares at her, confusion replacing the dread that had consumed him. "Daenerys, this changes everything." "My claim—" "Your claim," she interrupts, her voice gaining strength and certainty with each word, "strengthens ours." She reaches out and takes his hands in hers, her fingers warm despite the chill of the crypts. "Don't you see? For so long I believed I was the last dragon, the only Targaryen left in all the world. But you're proof that our house continues, that the blood of old Valyria runs strong." Jon searches her face, looking for deception or manipulation, but finds only sincere joy. "You're not angry. You're not threatened by what this means." Daenerys laughs, a sound like silver bells in the stone silence of the tombs. "Threatened? By my own blood?" She shakes her head, her silver hair shimmering. "Jon, you've already bent the knee to me. You've already chosen to follow my lead. But now I can give you something I never could before. I can give you your birthright." The Dragon Queen releases his hands, and begins to pace among the stone effigies, her mind already working through the possibilities. You were raised by Ned Stark, taught his honor and his ways. You know the North and the people love you. But you're also Targaryen, with the blood of dragons in your veins. You bonded with Rhaegal because it was your right to do so. She stops and turns to face him, her eyes bright with vision. Together we can rule as no Targaryen has ruled before, not through fear alone, but through both fear and love. Fire and ice united at last. Jon feels something shifting inside him, a weight he had carried his entire life beginning to lift. You want to train me, to teach me. I want to prepare you, Daenerys says firmly. The Iron Throne should pass to family, to blood. When my time comes to an end, it should be a Targaryen who follows. Not some distant lord or ambitious politician, but a true dragon. She moves closer again, placing her hand over his heart. You have the strength of wolves and the fire of dragons both. You could be the greatest king Westeros has ever known. The bastard of Winterfell, no, the prince of House Targaryen, stares at her in wonder. I never wanted to rule. I still don't know if I do. Good, Daenerys replies with conviction. The best rulers are those who understand the weight of the crown before they wear it. Your reluctance makes you worthy, not weak. She steps back and studies him with appraising eyes. But you'll need to learn. Our history, our traditions, the art of ruling with dragon wisdom rather than just northern honor. Jon nods slowly, feeling the truth of her words. And in return? In return, you give me what I've never had, she says simply. A family. An heir I can trust completely. Someone who understands both the power we wield and the responsibility that comes with it. Her voice grows softer. I've been alone for so long, Jon. The last dragon, with no one who truly understood the burden. But you carry the same blood, the same legacy. The two dragons stand in the flickering torchlight, surrounded by the stone witnesses of House Stark, and something fundamental shifts between them. No longer queen and sworn lord, but aunt and nephew. No longer rivals for a throne, but family planning a shared future. The others will need to know, Jon says finally. Sansa, Arya, Bran. They'll have questions. Daenerys nods. We'll tell them together. Present a united front from the very beginning. She straightens, and Jon can see the Queen returning to her voice and bearing. The realm must see that House Targaryen stands as one, that our dragons complement rather than compete with each other. Jon takes a deep breath, feeling the last of his old identity falling away like a discarded cloak. Aegon Targaryen, he says, testing the name on his tongue. It feels strange but not wrong, like a song he once knew but had forgotten. Prince Aegon, Daenerys corrects gently. My heir and my blood. She smiles at him, and in that moment, Jon sees not the Dragon Queen who burned King's Landing in another life, but family. True family, bound by blood and fire and shared purpose. Above them, the ancient stones of Winterfell creak in the wind, and somewhere in the distance, dragons call to each other across the night sky. The crypts hold their secrets close, but tonight they have witnessed the birth of something new. A Targaryen alliance built not on conquest, but on love. Not on fear, but on trust. The Game of Thrones is about to change forever. The great hall of Winterfell buzzes with nervous energy as preparations for the coming battle consume every corner of the ancient castle. Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen emerge from the crypts together, their faces bearing the weight of shared revelation. The torchlight catches the silver of her hair and the dark steel of his resolve as they walk side by side toward their destiny. Sansa Stark sits at the high table, reviewing supply lists with Maester Vulcan when she notices their approach. Her blue eyes narrow slightly as she observes their body language, the way they move with newfound purpose. Something has changed between the Dragon Queen and her brother, and Sansa's political instincts immediately sharpen. "Sister," Jon says as they approach the table, his voice carrying a formality that makes Sansa set down her quill. "We need to speak with you, all of you." Arya appears as if from shadows, moving with her characteristic silence. Her hand rests casually near Needle's hilt, a habit formed through years of survival. Bran wheels himself forward from where he has been sitting near the hearth, his strange, knowing eyes fixed on the pair. "Where would you like us to gather?" Sansa asks, her voice carefully neutral. She can sense the importance of whatever Jon needs to discuss, but years of political maneuvering have taught her to reveal nothing until she understands the game being played. "The Solar," Daenerys suggests, speaking for the first time since they left the crypts. This requires privacy. Within minutes, the Solar fills with the key players of their alliance. Tyrion Lannister enters with his usual measured steps, wine cup already in hand despite the late hour. Ser Jorah follows close behind, his weathered face creased with concern. Davos Seaworth takes his place near the door, ever the loyal advisor, ready for whatever storm approaches. Samwell Tarly arrives last, his face flushed with nervous energy and knowledge of what comes next. Jon stands before the assembled group, Daenerys at his side, and takes a deep breath. The weight of his revelation presses against his chest like armor forged from truth and consequence. "There's something you all need to know," he begins, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he must share. "About who I am. About what that means for all of us." Sansa leans forward in her chair, her hands folded carefully in her lap. "Go on." "I'm not Ned Stark's bastard," Jon says, the words easier now that he has spoken them once. "Sam discovered the truth in the Citadel records. My parents were Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. They were married legally, before the gods. That makes me Aegon Targaryen." Bran finishes quietly, his voice carrying neither surprise nor emotion. "Sixth of his name, the rightful heir to the Iron Throne." The Solar falls silent, except for the crackle of the fire and the distant sounds of soldiers preparing for war. Tyrion's wine cup freezes halfway to his lips. Jorah's scarred hand tightens on his sword pommel. Davos's eyes widen with understanding of the political earthquake they have just witnessed. But it is Sansa who speaks first, her voice sharp with calculation. "And what does our Dragon Queen think of this revelation?" All eyes turn to Daenerys, who stands with regal bearing despite the earth-shattering nature of the discussion. "I think," she says clearly, "that House Targaryen has been blessed. Jon is my nephew, my blood, my family, and I intend to train him as my heir." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Arya's hand actually moves to Needle's hilt, her survival instincts triggered by the sudden shift in power dynamics. Tyrion sets down his wine with careful precision, his clever mind already working through the implications. "Your heir?" Sansa asks, her voice carrying dangerous undertones. "And what of the North? What of our independence?" Jon steps forward, sensing the tension building between the two women who have shaped his recent life. "The North will be protected, Sansa. That hasn't changed. But this alliance, this family bond with Daenerys, it secures our future in ways we never imagined." "Family bond," Arya repeats, her voice flat. She studies Daenerys with the intensity of a predator evaluating potential prey. "And we're supposed to trust that this Dragon Queen won't burn us all when she tires of playing house." Daenerys meets Arya's stare without flinching. I've already proven my commitment to this alliance by coming north to fight the dead. Jon's revelation doesn't change that commitment, it strengthens it. Now I fight not just for political alliance, but for family. Tyrion clears his throat, his political instincts finally overcoming his shock. If I may, he says carefully, this changes the entire dynamic of the war for the Iron Throne. With Jon's claim acknowledged, and your Grace's support behind it. The realm will see a united Targaryen front, Daenerys finishes. Not a queen standing alone, but a dynasty restored. Jon brings the loyalty of the North and the legitimacy of Stark honor. I bring dragons and the support of our allies from Essos. Bran speaks from his chair, his voice carrying the weight of otherworldly knowledge. The last time Targaryens truly worked together, they conquered 6 of the 7 kingdoms. Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives changed the world through unity, not division. Aegon the Conqueror also burned Harrenhal to ash, Sansa points out sharply. Unity through fear isn't what the North needs. Which is why Jon's influence is so important, Daenerys responds, her voice gaining strength and conviction. He understands Northern honor in ways I never could. Together, we can rule with both fire and ice, both strength and mercy. Jorah steps forward, his loyal heart evident in his voice. Your Grace, if I may, this could be exactly what the realm needs. A ruler with the strength of dragons but the heart of wolves. Samwell, who has remained quiet throughout the exchange, finally speaks up. I've seen the records, the family trees, the bloodlines. Jon, Prince Aegon, has a stronger claim to the throne than anyone alive. But more than that, he looks directly at Jon. You've never wanted power for its own sake. That's what makes you worthy of it. Jon runs a hand through his dark hair, still struggling with the magnitude of his new identity. I still don't know if I want it, Sam. But if it means protecting the North, protecting our people, then you'll learn to want it, Daenerys says firmly. I'll teach you everything, our history, our strengths, our failures. The dragons respond to you because you are one of us. Rhaegal chose you because he recognized your blood. Arya crosses her arms, her skepticism still evident, but less hostile than before. And what happens when the dead are dealt with? When it's time to actually rule? We'll rule together, Daenerys answers. I'll prepare Jon for the crown while maintaining stability in the realm. When the time is right, the transition will be seamless. A Targaryen will rule as is proper, but one raised with northern values. Sansa studies both of them carefully, her political mind weighing risks and benefits. The North maintains its autonomy? The North maintains its honor and its voice, Jon assures her. That hasn't changed, Sansa. I'm still your brother, still loyal to our family. Our brother, Sansa corrects, and for the first time since the revelation, a small smile touches her lips. Though apparently a prince now. She stands and moves to the window, looking out at the courtyard where soldiers prepare for battle. I still have reservations about trusting dragons, but if this keeps the North safe and gives Jon the power to protect our people, she turns back to face them. I can support this alliance. For now. Arya nods slowly, her warrior's pragmatism overcoming her initial suspicion. Jon's still Jon, dragon prince or not. If he trusts you, she says to Daenerys, then I'll give you a chance to prove yourself. Tyrion raises his wine cup in a mock toast to the most surprising family reunion in Westeros history. The tension in the room eases slightly, though undercurrents of concern and calculation remain. Daenerys steps forward, addressing the group with regal authority. There's something else, she announces. Jon and I will begin joint training immediately. Dragon riding lessons, yes, but also lessons in governance, in Targaryen history, in the art of ruling 7 kingdoms. The realm must see us as partners, not rivals. Joint training in the middle of preparing for the army of the dead? Davos asks, practical as ever. Especially then, Jon replies, understanding beginning to dawn in his voice. Our enemies need to see that House Targaryen stands united, that we're not weakened by this revelation, but strengthened by it. Daenerys nods approvingly. Tomorrow morning, before the battle preparations consume us entirely, we'll begin. The dragons need to see us working together, and so does everyone else. As the meeting begins to break up, each advisor and family member, carrying new knowledge and new concerns, Bran remains seated by the fire. His otherworldly gaze follows Jon and Daenerys as they speak quietly together, planning their first lesson. The wheel turns, he says softly to no one in particular. But perhaps this time, it turns toward something better. Outside, the wind howls across the battlements of Winterfell, carrying the scent of snow and the promise of war. But inside the Solar, two dragons have found each other, and the Game of Thrones will never be the same. The dead come with the wind. Winterfell's ancient walls tremble as the army of the Night King crashes against them like a tide of bone and rotting flesh. The living defenders brace themselves behind battlements that have stood for thousands of years, but tonight they face an enemy older than memory itself. In the courtyard below, flames from 100 torches flicker against the darkness, casting dancing shadows across the faces of men and women who know they may not see another dawn. High above the battle, two dragons soar through the night sky with their riders united in purpose. Jon Snow grips Rhaegal's scales with steady hands, his dark eyes scanning the battlefield below for threats and opportunities. Beside him, Daenerys commands Drogon with the grace of someone born to fly, but tonight she flies not as a conqueror, but as a protector. "The North Wall!" Jon shouts across the wind, pointing toward a section where whites pour over the battlements like water through a broken dam. "We can cut them off there." Daenerys nods and banks Drogon toward the indicated position. For the first time in either dragon's life, they move in perfect coordination. Rhaegal unleashes torrents of dragon fire that clear a swath through the undead horde, while Drogon follows immediately behind, his flames sealing off escape routes and creating a wall of fire that even whites cannot cross. Below them, the defenders rally. Sansa directs civilians toward the crypts with fierce determination, her red hair bright in the firelight. Arya moves through shadows like death itself, Needle finding weak points in skeletal armor with deadly precision. Bran sits in the Godswood, bait for the Night King, but protected by rings of steel and shield. The Night King himself appears on his ice dragon, the creature's blue flames cutting through the darkness like frozen lightning. But instead of facing two separate enemies, he confronts something unprecedented, a unified Targaryen assault. "Together!" Daenerys calls out, and Jon understands immediately. They drive their dragons toward their ancient enemy, fire and fury combined. Rhaegal breathes flame from the left, while Drogon attacks from the right, forcing the ice dragon to choose between targets. It cannot defend against both. The battle rages for hours. Whites fall by the thousands, but more keep coming. The living forces give ground slowly, fighting for every stone of Winterfell's courtyard. Jorah Mormont stands at the center of the melee, his sword wet with the dark ichor of the dead, protecting a group of wounded soldiers who cannot retreat. That is when disaster strikes. The Night King's ice dragon, wounded but not broken, crashes into the courtyard near the main keep. Its impact shakes the very foundations of Winterfell, sending defenders sprawling. The creature rises again, blue fire gathering in its throat as it prepares to incinerate everything within reach. Jon sees the danger first. Rhaegal wheels through the air, positioning himself between the ice dragon and the defenders below, but he is too far away. His flames will not reach in time. Down in the courtyard, Jorah Mormont stands directly in the creature's line of fire, sword raised in defiance even as death approaches. Daenerys makes her choice. Drogon plunges from the sky like a falling star, positioning himself between the ice dragon and Jorah's position. The blue flames meant to kill dozens strike Drogon's armored hide instead, and though the great black dragon staggers under the assault, he holds his position long enough for Jon to arrive. Rhaegal's fire takes the ice dragon in the neck, severing vital muscles and sending the creature crashing to the ground in final death. But the victory comes at a price. Drogon bears terrible wounds from the blue flames, and in the confusion of the crash, whites surge forward toward the exposed defenders. Jorah fights like a man possessed, his blade cutting through white after white as he stands over wounded comrades who cannot flee. But there are too many of them. Dark blades find gaps in his armor, and the loyal knight of House Mormont begins to bleed. Jon lands Rhaegal in the courtyard and leaps from the dragon's back, his sword Longclaw singing as it cuts through the undead. He fights his way toward Jorah, but the press of enemies is too thick. He watches in horror as more white blades find their mark, and the old knight stumbles. That is when Daenerys arrives. She slides down from Drogon's back, despite his wounds, her own blade flashing in the firelight as she cuts down every white between herself and her most loyal protector. Together, she and Jon form a barrier around the fallen knight, their swords working in harmony as they hold back the tide of death. "My queen!" Jorah gasps, blood frothing at his lips as Daenerys kneels beside him. "My prince!" His eyes focus on Jon with clarity that cuts through pain. "Protect her. Protect each other. House Targaryen must endure." "We will," Jon promises, his voice thick with emotion. "Your sacrifice won't be forgotten." Jorah's weathered hand reaches up to touch Daenerys' face one final time. "I have served 3 generations of dragons now. You were the worthiest of them all." His eyes shift to Jon. "Both of you. The realm needs dragons like you." The old knight dies with a smile on his lips, his final breath carrying words of blessing for the alliance he helped forge. Around them, the battle continues. But something fundamental has changed. Jon and Daenerys have fought together, bled together, shared loss together. The tide turns when Arya strikes the final blow against the Night King himself. The army of the dead crumbles like sand castles before a tide, leaving Winterfell's courtyard littered with bones and the bodies of both the living and the dead. Victory has come, but at a cost that staggers the imagination. In the aftermath, as dawn breaks over the battlefield, Jon finds Daenerys sitting beside Jorah's body. Tears streak down her face, the first tears anyone has seen the Dragon Queen shed since Meereen. Her shoulders shake with grief that cuts deeper than any blade. "He believed in us," she says, without looking up. "Even at the end, he believed we could do this together." Jon sits beside her, his own grief a weight in his chest. Around them, the living tend to their wounded and count their dead. The victory feels hollow in the face of such sacrifice. "We almost lost everything tonight," Jon says quietly. "If we hadn't worked together, if the dragons hadn't coordinated." "But we did work together," Daenerys replies, finally meeting his eyes. "For the first time, I fought not as a queen standing alone, but as part of something larger." She reaches out and takes his hand. Jorah was right. House Targaryen endures, but only if we endure together. That evening, they hold a funeral ceremony unlike any Westeros has seen. Jon speaks the words of northern tradition, honoring the courage and loyalty of the fallen. Daenerys recites ancient Targaryen prayers, calling upon fire to carry the dead to their rest. Together, they light the funeral pyres, dragon flames mixing with traditional fire to send heroes to whatever lies beyond. The assembled survivors watch in silence as their leaders stand united in grief and purpose. Lords and ladies, soldiers and servants, all witness the birth of something new, a Targaryen alliance, forged not in conquest, but in shared sacrifice, sealed not with fear, but with mutual respect. As the flames rise into the night sky, carrying the smoke of honor toward the stars, Jon and Daenerys stand side by side. They have faced death together and emerged changed. The bastard of Winterfell has begun his true transformation into a dragon prince, while the Dragon Queen has learned that some crowns are heavier when shared, but stronger for the sharing. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new enemies, new tests of their alliance. But tonight, as Winterfell mourns its dead and celebrates its survival, 2 dragons have proven that fire burns brighter when it burns together. The road south from Winterfell stretches like a ribbon of mud and stone beneath the wheels of 100 wagons and the hooves of 10,000 horses. The combined armies of the North and the Dragon Queen move with purpose, but their pace is deliberate, measured. Daenerys Targaryen rides beside Jon Snow at the head of the column, their banners flying side by side. The 3-headed dragon and the direwolf united beneath a grey spring sky. "Tell me about Aegon the Conqueror," Daenerys says, as they crest a hill that offers views of the riverlands spreading before them like a green tapestry. Not the stories everyone knows, but what you think drove him. Jon adjusts his grip on his horse's reins, considering the question with the seriousness she has taught him to bring to all matters of rule. "Ambition," he answers after a moment. "But not just for power. Sam showed me letters in the Citadel records. Aegon believed the 7 kingdoms needed unity to face threats from beyond Westeros." "Good," Daenerys nods approvingly. "Most people see only the conquest, the dragons burning castles into submission. They miss the deeper truth. Aegon didn't unite the kingdoms for glory. He did it because divided, they were weak. United, they could face anything. Above them, Rhaegal circles lazily through the afternoon sky, his bronze wings catching sunlight as he keeps pace with the marching army. Jon watches his dragon with growing understanding of the bond they share, a connection deeper than mere rider and mount. "The dragons chose us," Jon says quietly. "Rhaegal didn't accept me because I commanded him to. He recognized something." "The blood of old Valyria," Daenerys confirms. "But more than that, dragons bond with those who understand power's true purpose. Rhaegal sees in you what Drogon sees in me, not a master seeking to dominate, but a partner seeking to protect." They ride in comfortable silence for a time, the sounds of the marching army filling the air around them. Dothraki horsemen scout the flanks, while Unsullied maintain perfect formation, despite the rough terrain. Northern lords ride with their own men, but the separation between the forces has begun to blur, as shared hardship creates new bonds. That evening, they make camp beside the Trident, the legendary river running dark and swift beneath a canopy of stars. Jon finds Daenerys standing beside the dragon camp, where Drogon rests, while his battle wounds continue to heal. The great black dragon's breathing is steady but labored, a reminder of the price paid for victory. "In Essos," Daenerys begins without preamble, "I learned that ruling through fear alone creates only temporary loyalty. The masters of Slavers Bay feared my dragons, but they never truly accepted my rule. The moment I left, rebellion sparked again." Jon settles beside her on a fallen log, his attention focused entirely on her words. These evening lessons have become as important as any war council, shaping his understanding of leadership in ways no northern lord could teach. "But ruling through love alone is equally dangerous," she continues. "I tried that too in Meereen. I freed the slaves and expected gratitude to sustain my reign. Instead, I found chaos. Some former slaves wanted to sell themselves back into slavery because freedom felt like starvation." "So what's the answer?" Jon asks, though he suspects he already knows. "Balance," Daenerys says, her voice carrying hard-won wisdom. "Fear of consequences for those who would harm the innocent. Love earned through protection of those who cannot protect themselves. A dragon's strength tempered by a ruler's mercy." Across the camp, soldiers gather around cookfires, sharing stories and rations. Jon watches a group where Dothraki warriors demonstrate knife-fighting techniques to fascinated northern soldiers, while nearby, unsullied help repair damaged northern armor with techniques learned in the fighting pits of Slavers Bay. They're learning to work together, Jon observes. Your people and mine. Our people, Daenerys corrects gently. And yes, they are, because they see us working together. Leadership isn't just about commanding armies. It's about modeling the behavior you want to see. A commotion near the command tent draws their attention. Tyrion approaches with a raven scroll in his hand, his expression grave in the firelight. "Your Grace, Prince Aegon," he says formally. Then his voice drops to urgency. "Word from King's Landing. Cersei has hired the Golden Company. 20,000 sellswords from across the narrow sea." Daenerys rises, immediately shifting into the mode of the Dragon Queen. "How many ships does she have to ferry them across?" "The Ravens report Euron Greyjoy's fleet is larger than we estimated," Tyrion replies grimly. "Perhaps 100 war galleys. And there are other reports. Strange weapons being forged in the Red Keep's armories." Jon stands as well, and without conscious thought, he steps closer to Daenerys, not behind her as a subordinate would, but beside her as an equal partner facing a shared threat. The gesture is not lost on Tyrion, whose shrewd eyes note the shift in their dynamic. "What do you think?" Daenerys asks Jon, genuinely seeking his counsel, rather than merely including him for appearances. Jon considers carefully, applying lessons learned both in northern war councils and through their recent conversations. Cersei's desperate. She's gathering every advantage she can because she knows we have dragons and a united army. The question is whether she's preparing for siege defense or planning something more aggressive. "Elaborate," Daenerys prompts, clearly pleased by his analytical approach. "If she's planning to hold King's Landing, the Golden Company and new weapons make sense as defensive measures. But if she's planning to meet us in the field..." Jon pauses, working through the implications. "Then she has something she believes can kill dragons." Tyrion nods approvingly. "My thoughts exactly, which means our approach needs to account for unknown threats." Daenerys looks between the two men, then makes her decision. "We continue south, but with increased caution. Double the scouts, and have our dragons maintain higher altitude when flying reconnaissance. If Cersei has weapons that can threaten dragons, we need to know what they are before we commit to battle." "I'll send word to our allies," Tyrion offers, already planning the tactical adjustments. "Wait," Jon says, and both advisors turn to him. "What if we don't give her the battle she's preparing for?" Daenerys raises an eyebrow, intrigued. "Explain." "Cersei's expecting a direct assault, dragonfire, and overwhelming force. She's prepared for the Dragon Queen's traditional approach. But what if we don't give her that fight?" Understanding begins to dawn in Daenerys' eyes. "You're thinking like a northern strategist, patience over passion." "I'm thinking like a Targaryen who learned from northern wolves," Jon clarifies, and the distinction is important. "We have time and legitimacy on our side. Why rush into whatever trap she's preparing when we can force her to come to us?" For the next hour, the three of them plan around the campaign table, maps spread beneath oil lamps while the army sleeps around them. Jon's suggestions carry increasing weight as he demonstrates not just understanding of military tactics, but grasp of the political dimensions Daenerys has been teaching him. When Tyrion finally retires to his tent, Jon and Daenerys remain by the dying fire. The Dragon Queen studies her nephew with satisfaction that goes beyond mere political alliance. "You're not the same man who bent the knee at Dragonstone," she observes. "No," Jon agrees quietly. "I'm beginning to understand what it means to be a dragon. Not just the fire and the flying, but the responsibility, the weight of decisions that affect kingdoms." "And how does it feel?" Jon looks up at the stars, where Rhaegal and Drogon rest on a nearby hilltop, silhouetted against the night sky. "Heavy," he admits, "but right. Like I'm finally becoming who I was always meant to be." Daenerys smiles, the expression warm and genuine in the firelight. Aegon the Conqueror would be proud to see his bloodline continued, by someone who understands that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to build. Around them, the camp settles into the quiet rhythms of an army at rest. Guards walk their circuits, horses snort softly in the picket lines, and somewhere in the distance, a soldier plays a haunting melody on a wooden flute. But between the Dragon Queen and her chosen heir, a different kind of peace has settled. The satisfaction of a teacher seeing her student grow into his potential. Tomorrow will bring them closer to King's Landing and whatever traps Cersei has prepared. But tonight, the education of a dragon prince continues beneath the stars, and the future of House Targaryen grows stronger with each lesson learned and each bond forged in the crucible of shared purpose. The gilded spires of King's Landing rise before the Targaryen host like accusation and promise combined. From the hill where Daenerys and Jon survey the capital of the Seven Kingdoms, the Red Keep perches atop Aegon's Hill like a crimson crown, its towers catching the morning light. Between the army and the city walls, the Blackwater rush flows dark and swift, carrying the scent of salt and smoke from the harbour beyond. "She could end this now," Jon says quietly, his eyes fixed on the banners flying from the city's battlements. The golden lion of House Lannister still flies beside the royal standard, defiant despite the dragons circling overhead. One word of surrender, and thousands of lives would be spared. Daenerys sits astride Drogon at the crest of the hill, her silver hair streaming in the wind as she studies the defences arrayed against them. The great black dragon shifts restlessly beneath her, his massive head turning toward the city with predatory interest. Beside them, Jon controls Rhaegal with growing confidence, the bronze dragon responding to his rider's tension with barely contained eagerness for battle. "Cersei Lannister has never surrendered anything in her life," Daenerys replies, her voice carrying the weight of bitter experience. She would rather see King's Landing burn than yield the Iron Throne to its rightful rulers. Below them, the combined armies of the North and the Dragon Queen spread across the fields south of the city, like a sea of steel and banners. Dothraki horsemen water their horses at streams running down from the hills, while unsullied form perfect squares for the assault to come. Northern lords consult with Targaryen commanders, their initial mistrust replaced by mutual respect, forged in the crucible of shared victory. A horn sounds from the city walls, and heralds emerge from the gates under a banner of truce. They ride slowly across the field toward the Targaryen camp, their horses picking careful paths through the muddy ground, churned by thousands of boots and hooves. "What do you think they'll offer?" Jon asks, as they guide their dragons down toward the command pavilion, where Tyrion waits with the other advisors. "Nothing we can accept," Daenerys answers grimly. "But we'll hear them out. It's what honorable rulers do, even when dealing with those who have no honor themselves." The heralds prove to be sellswords from the Golden Company, their golden armor bright in the afternoon sun, but their faces grim with the knowledge of the odds they face. Their leader, a scarred captain with the bearing of a veteran, delivers Cersei's terms with professional detachment. "Her Grace, Cersei of House Lannister, first of her name, offers terms for your withdrawal from the Crown Lands," he announces to the assembled War Council. "Full pardons for all rebels, restoration of northern independence under House Stark, and recognition of Targaryen claims to Dragonstone and the Stepstones." Tyrion laughs, a sound bitter as wine gone sour. "She offers us what we already have by right of conquest, and keeps the throne she stole through murder and treachery." "What of the people of King's Landing?" Jon asks, his voice cutting through the diplomatic posturing. "What protection does she offer them if we refuse?" The herald's mask slips for a moment, revealing uncertainty beneath the professional facade. "Her Grace has prepared defences suitable for a siege, my lord." "That's Prince Aegon," Daenerys corrects sharply, "and your queen's defences had better not include using civilians as human shields." The herald says nothing, but his silence speaks volumes. Around the council table, grim looks pass between the assembled commanders as they understand the true nature of Cersei's preparations. After the heralds depart with their predictable rejection, the War Council turns to strategy. Maps of King's Landing, spread across the table, show every gate, every tower, every potential avenue of assault. But the conversation keeps returning to the same fundamental question: how to take the city without destroying it. Dragonfire could breach the walls in minutes, Ser Jorah's replacement, a grizzled knight named Sir Roderick, points out. Quick strike, overwhelming force, minimum resistance. And maximum civilian casualties, Jon counters firmly. Those walls protect homes as well as soldiers, families who had no choice in Cersei's rebellion. Daenerys watches the debate with calculating eyes, weighing the military advantages against the political costs. In another life, in another timeline, the decision might be different. But Jon's presence, his unwavering moral compass, pulls her toward a different path. What if we combine approaches, she suggests finally. Precision strikes against military targets while offering clear escape routes for civilians? The logistics would be complex, Tyrion muses, already working through the possibilities. We'd need perfect coordination between dragon riders and ground forces. We've done it before, Jon reminds them. At Winterfell, we coordinated dragon attacks with unprecedented effectiveness. This would be the same principle on a larger scale. The debate continues deep into the evening, but gradually consensus builds around a strategy that balances military necessity with moral responsibility. Dragons will target the Red Keep and key defensive positions, while ground forces secure the gates and protect civilian areas. It's a plan that requires perfect execution, but one that offers hope for victory without wholesale slaughter. The assault begins at dawn, with the sound of war horns echoing across the Blackwater. Dothraki riders surge toward the city's outer defenses, while Unsullied advance in perfect formation, their spears gleaming in the early light. Above them, 2 dragons wheel through the sky with riders united in purpose. The Golden Company fights with professional competence, but they are sellswords facing dragons. Their lines hold for a time, but when Drogon's flames clear the outer walls of defenders, gaps begin to appear. Rhaegal follows immediately behind, Jon's growing confidence as a dragon rider evident in the precision of their attacks. From the Red Keep's highest tower, Cersei watches her carefully planned defenses crumble under the combined assault. Beside her, Jaime Lannister grips his sword hilt with his remaining hand, his face a mask of resignation and regret. "We could still escape," he says quietly. "The hidden passages you showed me as children. We could slip away in the chaos." Cersei's green eyes never leave the battle raging in the streets below. And go where? Hide in some distant castle, pretending to be minor nobles while dragons rule the throne our family held for years? "Better than dying here for pride," Jaime replies, but his voice lacks conviction. They both know she will never run. In the city below, the sound of bells begins to ring from the great sept of Baelor. The great bronze bells toll with desperate urgency, the traditional signal of surrender that has ended sieges for 1,000 years. But even as the bells ring, crossbow bolts still fly from the Red Keep's walls, and Golden Company soldiers continue to resist in the streets. High above the city, Jon and Daenerys hover on their dragons, watching the contradictory signals with growing frustration. The bells clearly indicate surrender, but the fighting continues unabated. "She's trying to have it both ways," Daenerys shouts across the wind. "Claim surrender to protect the city while continuing to fight for the throne." Jon's jaw tightens as he watches Lannister soldiers using civilian buildings as cover for their crossbows. "We can't accept partial surrender. Either she yields completely, or we finish this." For a moment, Daenerys feels the old fire rising in her chest, the dragon's rage that demands swift and terrible justice. In another timeline, that rage consumes her, and King's Landing burns, but Jon's voice cuts through the fury. "The Red Keep," he calls out, his words carrying absolute conviction. "Just the Red Keep and the military positions. Leave the rest of the city untouched." Understanding passes between them like lightning. Drogon wheels toward the ancient fortress that has housed kings for 3 centuries, while Rhaegal positions himself to cut off escape routes. Together, They unleash dragon fire with surgical precision, their flames carving through stone and steel, but avoiding the crowded streets below. The Red Keep's eastern tower collapses in a roar of stone and flame, taking with it the last of Cersei's defensive positions. In the wreckage, two figures move among the ruins, Cersei and Jaime, trapped together in the castle that shaped their lives. "At least we're together," Jaime says, as the ceiling begins to cave in above them. Cersei takes his hand with surprising gentleness. "Always," she whispers, and the words are lost in the thunder of falling stone. When the smoke clears, the Red Keep stands gutted, but not destroyed, its walls scarred by dragon fire, but its foundations intact. In the streets below, Lannister soldiers lay down their weapons as the reality of defeat becomes undeniable. The bells continue to ring, but now they toll not surrender, but victory. Daenerys and Jon land their dragons in the Red Keep's courtyard, where the Iron Throne sits twisted and partially melted by dragon fire, but still recognizable. Around them, the detritus of Cersei's final stand litters the ancient stones, broken weapons, torn banners, and the silence of the dead. "It's over," Jon says quietly, surveying the scene of their victory. "No," Daenerys corrects, her voice filled with determination rather than triumph. "Now it begins. The real work of ruling, of building something better than what came before." Together they walk toward the Iron Throne, two dragons who have proven that power can be wielded with precision rather than brutality, that victory can be won without becoming monsters. The Game of Thrones has ended, but the art of ruling has only just begun. The throne room of the Red Keep has been transformed in the 3 days since the conquest of King's Landing. Where once Cersei Lannister held court beneath banners of gold and crimson, now the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen hangs alongside the direwolf of House Stark. The damaged walls bear fresh tapestries depicting the history of old Valyria, while the floor has been cleared of debris and polished until it gleams like black water beneath the morning light streaming through tall windows. At the center of it all sits the Iron Throne, that ancient seat of kings forged from the swords of Aegon's enemies. But today, it will serve its final purpose, before being transformed into something new. Daenerys Targaryen stands before it, in robes of black and red, her silver hair braided with thin chains of Valyrian steel that catch the light like captured starfire. Beside her, Jon Snow wears the colors of his true house for the first time, black leather, trimmed with red dragon scales, a circlet of dark metal resting on his brow. The great lords of Westeros fill the throne room, their banners creating a tapestry of allegiances old and new. Sansa Stark represents the north, her auburn hair bright beneath a circlet of silver and sapphires. Samwell Tarly stands for the reach in his master's chains, while Gendry Waters, now legitimized as Gendry Baratheon, holds the Storm Lord's fealty. Even Dornish princes have come to witness this moment, their spears glinting in the filtered sunlight. "Lords and ladies of the Seven Kingdoms," Tyrion Lannister calls out, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "You have come to witness the restoration of House Targaryen to the Iron Throne, and the establishment of a new order for the realm." Daenerys steps forward, but instead of approaching the throne, she turns to address the assembled nobility directly. Her voice rings with authority earned through dragonfire and tempered by hard-won wisdom. For 300 years, the Iron Throne has been the symbol of absolute power in Westeros, she begins, her violet eyes sweeping across the crowd. Forged from the weapons of the defeated, it was meant to remind all who looked upon it that conquest creates kings. But I haven't come here to rule through conquest alone. Jon moves to stand beside her, not as a subject presenting himself to a queen, but as an equal partner in the establishment of their new dynasty. The symbolism is not lost on the watching lords, whose murmurs of surprise ripple through the chamber. "Before I accept the crown," Daenerys continues, "this throne must be transformed. The old symbol of division and fear must give way to something that represents unity and justice. She raises her hand, and Drogon's roar echoes from the courtyard outside. Moments later, the great black dragon's head appears at one of the throne room's massive windows, his golden eyes fixed on the twisted mass of swords and metal that has dominated this chamber for centuries. "Dracarys," Daenerys commands, and dragonfire fills the throne room. The Iron Throne melts under Drogon's flames like snow under spring rain. The swords that once symbolized conquest flow together into pools of molten metal, their shapes lost in the transformative heat. When the flames subside, where the Iron Throne once stood, a new seat has been forged, still made of swords, but reformed into something elegant and graceful, with space for two rulers rather than one solitary monarch. The assembled lords watch in awed silence as the metal cools and hardens. The new throne rises from the floor in flowing lines that speak of partnership rather than dominance, its twin seats positioned to show equality between its occupants. "Behold the Dragon Throne," Jon announces, his voice carrying newfound confidence in his role as prince and heir. Symbol not of conquest, but of the union that will guide the Seven Kingdoms into a new age. Tyrion steps forward, with the crown of Aegon the Conqueror, its black iron and rubies gleaming in the light from the windows. But before he can place it on Daenerys' head, she raises a hand to stop him. "Before any crown is worn," she says, "let us establish the principles that will govern this realm. Jon, as Prince Regent and my acknowledged heir, will help me rule not as a subordinate, but as an equal partner in all matters of state." Sansa Stark steps forward, her voice clear and strong. "And what of the North's independence? What of the promises made to those who fought and died for freedom?" Jon meets his sister's gaze steadily. "The North will retain its autonomy in all internal matters," he declares. "House Stark will rule from Winterfell as wardens of the North, but as willing partners in the greater kingdom rather than conquered subjects." "What of the other kingdoms?" asks Prince Quentyn Martell, speaking for Dorne. "Will the same autonomy be extended to all who seek it?" Daenerys and Jon exchange glances. Then Jon responds, "Each kingdom will have representation on a new royal council that will help govern the realm. Local customs and laws will be respected where they do not conflict with the crown's justice." "And what form will that justice take?" Samwell asks, his scholarly mind already working through the implications. "What laws will bind this new kingdom together?" "Laws written not by conquerors, but by the representatives of all 7 kingdoms," Daenerys answers. "A great council will convene within the year to establish a code of justice that protects the rights of lords and small folk alike." The ceremony continues with the formal swearing of oaths, but these are different from the traditional feudal pledges of absolute obedience. Each lord who kneels before the Dragon Throne swears fealty not to a single monarch, but to the principles of the new kingdom: justice, protection of the innocent, and mutual respect between the crown and its subjects. When Tyrion finally places the crown on Daenerys' head, a second circlet is brought forward for Jon. Not a king's crown, but a prince's coronet that marks him clearly as heir and co-ruler. Together, they take their seats on the Dragon Throne, and for the first time in the history of Westeros, 2 rulers share power by design rather than by accident. "Your Grace," Tyrion says formally, then turns to Jon. "Your Highness, the realm awaits your pleasure." Daenerys rises from her seat, Jon beside her. "Our first act as joint rulers is to name Tyrion Lannister as Hand of the Queen, charged with overseeing the daily governance of the realm, while Prince Aegon and I work to establish the institutions that will guide our kingdom. Our second act," Jon continues seamlessly, "is to declare a general amnesty for all who served the previous regime, provided they swear to uphold the laws and principles of the new kingdom." The pronouncements continue throughout the morning. New positions are created, a master of laws drawn from the scholarly orders, a voice of the small folk to represent common interests, a master of reconstruction to oversee the rebuilding of war-damaged regions. Each appointment is made jointly by both rulers, emphasizing their partnership in all decisions. As the formal ceremony concludes and the lords begin to disperse to their new duties, Sansa approaches the dragon throne, where her brother and the Dragon Queen remain in quiet conversation. "Jon," she says, using his familiar name rather than his royal title. "You've changed. Not just the crown or the name, but you carry yourself differently now." Jon considers her words carefully. "I've learned that leadership isn't just about making decisions, Sansa. It's about helping others understand why those decisions matter. Daenerys has taught me that the crown is not a prize to be won, but a burden to be shared." Daenerys nods approvingly. "And Jon has taught me that strength without mercy is mere tyranny, while mercy without strength is merely weakness. Together, we can be what neither could achieve alone." "The North will support this new order," Sansa declares formally, "not from fear or obligation, but because you've proven that this alliance serves all the kingdoms, not just House Targaryen." As evening falls over King's Landing, the new rulers stand on the balcony of the Red Keep, looking out over a city that bears the scars of conquest, but not the devastation of wholesale destruction. In the harbor, ships from across the known world bring trade and tribute. In the streets, small folk go about their business under the protection of unsullied guards who have been instructed to serve rather than intimidate. "The easy part is over," Daenerys observes, watching the lights begin to twinkle in the city below. "Taking the throne was the easy part?" Jon asks with a wry smile. "Compared to ruling justly for the next 30 years? Yes." Daenerys takes his hand, their fingers intertwining as naturally as their destinies have become intertwined. "But at least we face that challenge together." Above them, 2 dragons circle in the evening sky, their roars echoing across the capital as they call out to each other. Below, the 7 kingdoms settle into the first night of a new age, where dragons rule not through fear alone, but through the wisdom of shared power and the strength of united purpose. The raven arrives at dawn, its black wings cutting through the morning mist that rises from the Blackwater rush. In the royal solar of the Red Keep, Jon Snow breaks the wax seal with steady fingers, though his expression darkens as he reads the message within. Across the chamber, Daenerys looks up from her own correspondence, noting the tension that settles across his features like storm clouds gathering. "More reports from the Riverlands?" she asks, setting aside a trade agreement from Volantis to focus entirely on him. Jon nods grimly, passing her the parchment. "Lord Mallister writes from Seaguard. He's heard whispers among the River Lords. Some question whether I truly rule alongside you, or whether I'm merely—" He pauses, searching for diplomatic phrasing. "A wolf in dragon's clothing, dancing to your tune." Daenerys reads the letter with the careful attention she brings to all intelligence reports. 6 months of joint rule have taught both of them to take such warnings seriously, even when they sting. "And what does Lord Mallister advise?" "A progress through the Riverlands," Jon replies. "Let the lords see us together, working as partners rather than the Dragon Queen and her puppet king," Daenerys finishes bluntly. "At least they're being creative with their insults now." The solar door opens to admit Tyrion Lannister, whose expression suggests he brings more troubling news. The hand of the Queen has aged in the months since their coronation, the weight of rebuilding a kingdom showing in the lines around his eyes and the frequency with which he reaches for his wine cup. "Your Grace, Your Highness," he says formally. Then his voice drops to urgency. "We have a more immediate problem than rumors in the Riverlands. Varys's little birds have discovered something concerning in the capital itself." Jon and Daenerys exchange glances, then give Tyrion their full attention. The Spymaster's network has proven invaluable in the early months of their reign, identifying potential threats before they can mature into genuine danger. "What kind of concerning?" Daenerys asks, though her tone suggests she already suspects the answer. The kind that involves steel in the dark and poison in wine cups, Tyrion replies grimly. A plot involving several minor lords who believe Prince Aegon would make a more manageable ruler than the current arrangement. Jon's hand moves instinctively toward Longclaw's hilt. They want to kill Daenerys and put me on the throne alone. More specifically, they want to eliminate what they see as foreign influence on the crown, Tyrion clarifies. The Dothraki and Unsullied make them nervous, as do the trade agreements with Essos. They believe a Stark-raised king would be more amenable to traditional Westerosi interests. Fools, Daenerys says sharply. Do they think Jon would simply accept the murder of his family and rule as their creature? They think he's young enough and inexperienced enough to be guided by wiser heads, Tyrion answers. Lords Rosby, Stokeworth, and Hayford are the primary conspirators, along with several others from the Crownlands who lost influence under the new system. Jon stands and begins pacing, a habit he has developed when wrestling with difficult decisions. The morning light streaming through the solar windows catches the red thread worked into his black doublet, a visual reminder of his dual heritage that has become his signature style. They're not entirely wrong about one thing, he says finally, and both Tyrion and Daenerys look at him sharply. I'm inexperienced. 6 months ago, I was a bastard who knew nothing of ruling beyond what I learned at Winterfell. Without Daenerys' guidance, you would have learned, Daenerys interrupts firmly. Perhaps more slowly, perhaps making different mistakes, but you would have learned. The dragons chose you, Jon. That wasn't an accident or a result of my influence. Tyrion clears his throat diplomatically. While this conversation about divine selection is fascinating, we still have the immediate problem of preventing your assassination. Varys suggests we arrest the conspirators before they can act. No, Jon says immediately, and both advisors look surprised by the certainty in his voice. Arrests prove their point for them. It makes it look like Daenerys is eliminating my potential allies to maintain her hold over me. Then what do you suggest? Daenerys asks, though her tone indicates genuine curiosity rather than skepticism about his judgment. Jon stops pacing and turns to face them both. We give them exactly what they claim they want, a chance to present their grievances directly to me, alone, without your supposed influence. That sounds remarkably like walking into a trap, Tyrion observes dryly. It would be, if I were actually alone, Jon replies with a slight smile. But I won't be, will I? I'll have Varys's birds watching every corner, loyal guards positioned throughout the meeting space, and the knowledge that my dragon-riding partner will be very close by. Understanding dawns in Daenerys' eyes. You want to let them reveal themselves while we control the circumstances. Exactly. If they truly believe I'm being manipulated, let them make their case. When they inevitably reveal their true intentions, assassination rather than counsel, we'll have witnesses and evidence that justifies whatever response becomes necessary. The plan takes shape over the following week. Lord Rosby requests a private audience with the Prince Regent, claiming he wishes to discuss concerns about the realm's direction without causing offence to the Queen. Jon agrees, suggesting they meet in the small council chamber after the evening meal, when the Red Keep is quiet and they can speak freely. What the conspirators don't know is that Varys has replaced several servants with his own agents, that loyal guards are positioned just outside the chamber, and that Daenerys waits with Drogon on a nearby balcony, close enough to intervene within moments if the meeting turns violent. The conspirators arrive as planned, their faces grave with the weight of what they believe to be patriotic duty. Lord Rosby leads the group, flanked by Lords Stokeworth and Hayford, with several minor knights whose names Jon recognizes from the swearing of oaths after the conquest. Your Highness, Rosby begins formally, we come to you as loyal subjects concerned about the realm's future. I appreciate your loyalty, Jon replies, taking his seat at the head of the council table. Please, speak freely about your concerns. For nearly an hour, the conspirators present their case with careful words and diplomatic phrasing. They speak of the realm's need for traditional leadership, of concerns about foreign influences, of the importance of maintaining Westerosi customs and values. Jon listens patiently, asking thoughtful questions and nodding at appropriate moments. It is only when Lord Stokeworth suggests that certain elements of the current arrangement might be reconsidered for the good of all that the conversation takes a darker turn. "What elements, specifically?" Jon asks, his voice remaining carefully neutral. "The Queen's foreign advisers, perhaps," Hayford suggests. "The continued presence of Dothraki and Unsullied in the capital. The excessive influence of Essos trade interests." "I see," Jon says quietly. "And how would you suggest implementing these reconsiderations?" The conspirators exchange glances, and Jon can see the moment when they decide to reveal their true intentions. Lord Rosby leans forward, his voice dropping to a conspirative whisper. "There are ways, Your Highness. Accidents happen, even to those protected by dragons. A hunting accident, perhaps, or illness brought on by the stress of rule. You would be grief-stricken, naturally, but duty would require you to continue governing. With proper guidance, of course." "Of course," Jon agrees, his hand resting casually on the table near a small bell that will summon the guards. "And this proper guidance would come from you?" "From those who understand the true needs of the Seven Kingdoms," Rosby confirms, apparently taking Jon's calm demeanor as agreement. "You have the blood and the bearing to be a great king, Your Highness. You simply need to be freed from foreign entanglements." Jon stands slowly, his movement causing all the conspirators to tense. "I want to be sure I understand your proposal correctly. You're suggesting that I would benefit from the murder of my family member, my mentor, and my partner in rule?" The shift in his tone sends alarm through the room. Lord Hayford's hand moves toward his belt, where a dagger probably waits, but before he can draw steel, the chamber doors open. "Actually," Daenerys says, as she enters with a full complement of guards, "I'd like to hear their answer to that question as well." The conspirators scramble to their feet, some reaching for weapons, while others attempt to maintain their diplomatic facades. But Jon's voice cuts through the confusion with absolute authority. "Seize them," he commands, and loyal guards move with swift efficiency. As the conspirators are restrained, Jon addresses them with the voice of a king, rather than the uncertain bastard they expected to manipulate. "You wanted to see if I could rule without Queen Daenerys' influence," he says coldly. "Very well. By my sole authority as Prince Regent, I find you guilty of treason and conspiracy to commit murder. The traditional punishment for such crimes is death. But I choose to show mercy. You will be stripped of your titles and lands, which will be redistributed to those who have shown true loyalty to the crown. You will be exiled from Westeros permanently, forbidden to return on pain of death." "You can't," Lord Rosby begins, but Daenerys interrupts. "He can, and he has," she says with satisfaction. "By the laws of the Seven Kingdoms, the Prince Regent's judgment in matters of treason is final." As the former conspirators are led away to await transport to exile, Jon and Daenerys remain in the council chamber. The test of their partnership has ended not with division, but with demonstration of their united strength. "You handled that well," Daenerys observes, "though I notice you chose exile over execution." "Dead martyrs inspire more rebellion than living examples of failure," Jon replies. "Besides, you taught me that mercy can be a form of strength when applied judiciously. And you taught me that sometimes the best way to deal with those who question our partnership is to show them what that partnership actually looks like in action." They walk together toward the solar, their footsteps echoing in the corridor, as the Red Keep settles into its nighttime quiet. Outside, dragons call to each other across the sky, and in the distance, the lights of King's Landing twinkle like stars reflected in dark water. The first major test of their joint rule has ended not with crisis, but with confirmation that two dragons are indeed stronger than one. The war galley cuts through the choppy waters of Blackwater Bay like a blade through silk, its black sails emblazoned with the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen. From the ship's bow, Jon Snow watches the horizon, where storm clouds gather above the narrow sea, their dark mass promising rough weather ahead. Behind him, a fleet of 60 ships follows in formation, Royal Navy vessels alongside commandeered merchant galleys, all flying the dragon banner in defiance of the threat that has emerged from the Iron Islands. "Storm coming," Davos Seaworth observes, joining Jon at the rail. The old smuggler turned knight has proven invaluable in organizing the naval response to Euron Greyjoy's renewed rebellion, both the weather and what we'll find when we reach the Iron Islands. Jon nods, his hand resting on Longclaw's pommel, as he considers the intelligence reports that have reached them over the past weeks. Euron has returned from Essos with reinforcements, sell-sail companies, exiled corsairs, and vessels flying the colors of distant free cities. The Crow's Eye has declared himself king of the Iron Islands once again, claiming that the Targaryen restoration is an affront to the Ironborn way of life. "How many ships does Euron command now?" Jon asks, though he knows the answer troubles him. "Latest reports suggest nearly 100 war galleys, plus support vessels," Davos replies grimly. "He's been recruiting heavily in the Stepstones and along the disputed lands, pirates and sell-sails who see opportunity in rebellion against the Iron Throne." Above them, Rhaegal circles through the gathering clouds, the bronze dragon's keen eyes scanning the waters ahead for enemy sails. The bond between dragon and rider has grown stronger with each passing month, and Jon can almost feel what Rhaegal sees through their connection, empty sea stretching toward the horizon, but with the promise of battle ahead. Meanwhile, 300 miles away in King's Landing, Daenerys Targaryen stands in the throne room, receiving reports from across the Seven Kingdoms. The separation is necessary. Jon must prove he can command independently, while she maintains stability at home. But neither finds it easy to be apart during a crisis. The Reach Lords are requesting additional grain shipments for the winter stores, Tyrion reports, consulting his ever-present sheaf of papers. And there are reports of banditry along the Rose Road that require attention. "Grant the grain requests," Daenerys decides quickly. "A well-fed realm is a stable realm. As for the bandits, send a company of Unsullied to patrol the road. Sometimes a show of force prevents problems before they require larger solutions." She pauses at the window that offers views of the harbour, where the remaining ships of the royal fleet ride at anchor. Drogon rests on the Red Keep's highest tower, the great black dragon's presence, a constant reminder that the capital remains well defended despite Jon's absence. "Any word from the Northern Fleet?" she asks, though she knows Tyrion would have informed her immediately of any news from Jon's campaign. "Ravens fly slowly over water," Tyrion reminds her gently, but the last report had them making good progress toward the Iron Islands. Jon seemed confident about the intelligence Theon provided. The mention of Theon Greyjoy brings a slight frown to Daenerys' features. The former ward of Winterfell had arrived at King's Landing 2 weeks earlier, bearing news of his uncle's rebellion and an offer to guide Jon's forces to Euron's strongholds. His information had proven crucial in planning the naval campaign, but his presence still unsettled some at court who remembered his earlier betrayals. Far to the west, that same Theon stands on the deck of Jon's flagship, pointing toward a cluster of rocky islands emerging from the morning mist. His face bears the scars of years of torment, but his voice carries new strength when he speaks of serving the Targaryen cause. "Pike lies beyond those rocks," he tells Jon, his finger tracing the approach routes on a sea-stained chart. "But Euron won't be there. He's too clever to trap himself on the main island. More likely, he's using the smaller islands as bases, moving his fleet between them to avoid being pinned down." "Where would you position your ships if you were him?" Jon asks, studying the maze of islands and channels that make up the Iron Islands archipelago. Theon considers carefully, his knowledge of these waters earned through years of childhood exploration and recent reconnaissance. "Here," he says finally, pointing to a group of islands northwest of Pike. Good harbours, multiple escape routes, and positioned to strike at any approach to the main islands. Jon nods and turns to the assembled captains of his fleet. We'll split our forces. Half will approach from the south, making enough noise to draw Euron's attention. The other half will circle north and west, cutting off his escape routes. "And you, your highness?" asks Captain Orain Waters, commander of the Royal Fleet's northern squadron. Jon looks up at Rhaegal, who has descended to fly just above the fleet's masts. "I'll be providing aerial reconnaissance and fire support where needed. If Euron wants to face dragons, he'll get his wish." The battle begins at dawn 2 days later, when the southern squadron engages Euron's picket ships among the outer islands. The crash of catapult stones and the screams of men echo across the water as naval combat erupts in the narrow channels between rocky outcroppings. Euron's ships fight with the desperation of cornered wolves, but they are outnumbered and outgunned by the Royal Fleet's disciplined formations. From high above, Jon watches the engagement unfold while Rhaegal circles patiently. The dragon's flames could end the battle quickly, but Jon holds back, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This is his first independent command, and he knows both his own forces and enemies across the realm are watching to see how he handles himself without Daenerys at his side. That moment comes when Euron himself appears aboard his flagship, Silence, leading a squadron of his most loyal captains in a desperate attempt to break through the Royal Fleet's northern line. The black-sailed vessels surge forward with reckless courage, their rams aimed at the heart of Jon's formation. "Now," Jon murmurs, and Rhaegal responds with a roar that echoes across the water. Dragon and rider plunge from the sky like a bronze thunderbolt, Rhaegal's flames sweeping across the lead enemy ships. But instead of the wholesale destruction that might be expected, Jon directs the attack with surgical precision, targeting sails and rigging to disable vessels rather than burning crews alive. It is a display of both power and restraint that leaves observers on both sides awed by the young prince's command of his dragon. The battle turns decisively when Yara Greyjoy arrives with a squadron of ironborn ships flying Targaryen banners. Euron's own niece has chosen to support the Iron Throne rather than her uncle's rebellion, and her knowledge of ironborn tactics proves devastating against Euron's formations. "Uncle!" she shouts across the water as her ship closes with silence. "You've brought dishonor enough to our house." The personal duel between Yara and Euron is brief but vicious, fought on the deck of his flagship, while dragon fire rains around them and loyal crews battle for control. In the end, it is Theon who strikes the decisive blow, his sword finding the gap in Euron's armor that his sister's blade had created. As Euron Greyjoy sinks beneath the dark waters of his homeland, his rebellion dies with him. The surviving ships surrender or flee, and the Iron Islands return to Targaryen rule under Yara's leadership as the new Lady Paramount. When Jon returns to King's Landing a week later, he brings with him not only victory, but also something more valuable, proof that he can command independently while maintaining the principles he and Daenerys have established together. The fleet's approach to the capital draws crowds to the harbour, and cheers echo across the water as the bronze dragon and his rider circle above the triumphant vessels. In the throne room, Daenerys receives Jon's report with pride that shines clearly in her violet eyes. But it is not the pride of a queen accepting a vassal's tribute. It is the satisfaction of a mentor seeing her student prove himself worthy of the crown he will someday wear alone. "The realm sees you differently now," she observes, as they stand together on the Red Keep's highest balcony, watching the celebration continue in the streets below. "Not as my chosen heir, but as a prince who has earned his place through his own actions." Jon considers her words carefully. The campaign has indeed changed something fundamental about how others view him, but more importantly, it has changed how he views himself. "I couldn't have done it without the foundation you helped me build," he says honestly. "The lessons in strategy, in command, in understanding the balance between strength and mercy. But you applied those lessons independently, Daenerys replies. That's what makes the victory truly yours. Above them, two dragons call to each other across the evening sky. Drogon and Rhaegal reunited after days apart, their roars echoing the bond between their riders. Below, King's Landing settles into another peaceful night under the protection of dragons, while across the realm, potential enemies take note of the young prince who has proven himself capable of independent command. The iron price has been paid, and Jon Snow has emerged not as Daenerys' shadow, but as a dragon prince worthy of the crown he will someday inherit. The sun beats down mercilessly on the water gardens of Dorne, its rays turning the ancient pools into mirrors of burnished gold. Palm trees rustle in the hot wind that carries the scent of oranges and spices from the gardens beyond, while the distant sound of the summer sea provides a constant murmur of waves against sun-baked stone. In this place of beauty and peace, two dragons have come to face the most delicate challenge of their joint reign. Daenerys Targaryen sits across from Prince Quentyn Martell in the shade of a marble pavilion, her silver hair bound back against the heat, while her violet eyes study the young Dornish prince with careful attention. Beside her, Jon Snow wears lighter clothing than his usual northern garb, but his hand rests near Longclaw's hilt, a reminder that even diplomatic missions can turn dangerous in the volatile politics of Dorne. "Your Grace, Your Highness," Prince Quentyn begins formally, though his dark eyes flash with barely contained anger. "We appreciate that you have come personally to address our concerns. It shows a respect that House Targaryen has not always extended to Dorne." The words carry the weight of centuries of grievance, and both Jon and Daenerys understand that this meeting will determine whether the ancient kingdom of Dorne remains part of the Seven Kingdoms or breaks away in open rebellion. Reports from across the region speak of Dornish spears gathering, of ancient war songs being sung in the markets of Sunspear, and of riders carrying messages between the great houses calling for independence. "Prince Quentyn," Daenerys replies carefully, "we know that Dorne has suffered under previous Targaryen rule. We're here to listen, to understand, and to find a path forward that honors both our crown's authority and Dorne's proud traditions." "Pretty words," says Princess Arianne Martell, entering the pavilion with the fluid grace that marks her bloodline. "But we've heard pretty words from Targaryens before. My ancestor, Princess Merya, heard them from Aegon the Conqueror himself, before he tried to burn Dorne into submission." Jon leans forward slightly, his voice carrying genuine interest rather than defensiveness. "Tell us about Princess Merya. What did she teach Dorne about dealing with dragons?" The question surprises both Martells, who had expected either threats or empty platitudes. Arianne takes a seat beside her brother, her keen eyes studying Jon with new interest. "She taught us that dragons are not invincible," Arianne replies after a moment. "That pride makes even the mightiest beasts vulnerable, and that sometimes the best victory is simply refusing to be conquered." "And what did Aegon learn from his failures in Dorne?" Jon asks, genuinely curious. Quentyn's anger flickers, replaced momentarily by scholarly interest. "That force alone cannot bind a people who refuse to kneel. That burning castles and killing princes only breeds more resistance. That Dorne would rather die free than live as slaves." "Yet eventually, Dorne did join the Seven Kingdoms," Daenerys observes. "Through marriage, through negotiation, through mutual benefit rather than conquest." "Because Daeron II understood what his ancestors did not," Arianne agrees. "That Dorne brings strength to the realm when we choose to participate, not when we're forced to submit." The afternoon passes in careful conversation, with both sides probing for weakness while seeking common ground. Servants bring cool wine and fresh fruit as the discussions continue, the formal diplomatic language gradually giving way to more honest exchanges about the grievances that have driven Dorne to the brink of rebellion. "The problem," Quentyn explains as evening approaches, is that the Iron Throne has always seen Dorne as different, as other. Our laws, our customs, our way of succession, all dismissed as foreign oddities, to be tolerated rather than respected. Your laws regarding inheritance, Jon says thoughtfully. The eldest child inherits regardless of gender. It's actually more just than the system used in the rest of Westeros. Arianne's eyebrows rise in surprise. You approve of female inheritance? That's not very traditional northern thinking. I was raised by Ned Stark, but I've learned much about justice from Daenerys, Jon replies. Merit matters more than gender when it comes to leadership. Dorne understood that long before the rest of the realm. And what of our other customs? Arianne presses. The acceptance of paramours, the different attitudes toward bastards, the way we handle disputes between houses? Daenerys speaks for the first time in several minutes. We're not here to change Dorne into something it isn't. We're here to find a way for Dorne to remain Dornish while still being part of the Seven Kingdoms. The conversation continues late into the evening, moving from the formal pavilion to the private chambers of Sunspear, as trust slowly builds between the negotiating parties. Maps are spread across tables as they discuss trade routes and taxation, while scrolls containing ancient laws are examined and compared. It is near midnight when Prince Quentyn finally voices the central issue that underlies all of Dorne's grievances. The problem, Your Grace, is that we've been treated as a conquered province rather than a partner kingdom. Our voices are rarely heard in King's Landing, our concerns dismissed, our contributions minimized. Why should we remain part of a realm that doesn't value what we bring to it? Jon and Daenerys exchange glances, the kind of silent communication that has developed between them over months of joint rule. Then Jon speaks with quiet conviction. Because we do value what you bring. Dorne's knowledge of desert warfare, your trading connections across the Summer Sea, your legal traditions that could improve justice throughout the realm. But more than that, because the Seven Kingdoms are stronger when they include the wisdom and strength of all their parts. Words are easy, Your Highness, Arianne replies skeptically. What guarantees do we have that these aren't just pretty speeches to keep us quiet while nothing really changes? Daenerys leans forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making momentous decisions. Guaranteed representation on the small council, a permanent position for a Dornish advisor in all matters affecting the South, autonomy in internal affairs comparable to what we've granted the North, and... She pauses, glancing at Jon. A formal alliance, sealed through marriage. The room falls silent except for the distant sound of waves and the whisper of night wind through the palace corridors. Both Martells lean forward with sudden, sharp attention. What kind of marriage alliance? Quentyn asks carefully. Jon speaks with the measured tone of someone who has given this considerable thought. A marriage between houses that honors both Northern and Dornish traditions. Perhaps between a member of House Stark and House Martell, or between a prominent northern house and a Dornish noble family. You're thinking of your sister? Arianne asks shrewdly. Lady Sansa? I'm thinking of creating bonds that ensure Dorne always has a voice in the realm's governance, Jon replies diplomatically. The specific arrangements would be worked out with all parties involved, ensuring everyone's consent and happiness. Princess Arianne sits back in her chair, her mind clearly working through the implications. This is not what we expected when we called for independence. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones nobody expects, Daenerys observes. Aegon the Conqueror tried to solve Dorne through fire and blood. We're offering partnership and mutual respect. The negotiations continue for 3 more days, hammering out details and addressing concerns that have festered for generations. Ancient grievances are acknowledged and addressed, while new frameworks for cooperation are established. The marriage alliance becomes just one part of a comprehensive agreement that gives Dorne unprecedented autonomy while maintaining their place in the Seven Kingdoms. When the final agreements are signed in the Great Hall of Sunspear, with Dornish spears and Targaryen banners side by side, it marks more than just the end of a potential rebellion. It establishes a new model for governance that values negotiation over conquest, partnership over domination. "This is how the Iron Throne should work," Jon observes to Daenerys as they prepare to return to King's Landing. Not as a distant authority imposing its will, but as the center of a web of alliances that benefits everyone involved. "Your diplomatic skills have improved remarkably," Daenerys replies with satisfaction. "A year ago, you would have approached this crisis very differently. A year ago, I thought ruling meant making commands and expecting obedience," Jon admits. "Now I understand that true strength comes from bringing out the best in those you govern." Above them, Rhaegal and Drogon circle through the desert sky, their roars echoing across the red dunes and ancient castles of Dorne. But these are not the roars of conquest that Aegon the Conqueror brought to this land centuries ago. These are the calls of dragons who have learned that fire can forge alliances as well as destroy enemies. As the Targaryen party prepares to depart Sunspear, Prince Quentyn approaches Jon for a private word. "Your Highness," he says formally. Then his voice becomes more personal. "When your time comes to rule alone, remember what you learned here. Power shared willingly is stronger than power taken by force." "I'll remember," Jon promises, and both men know he means it. The return journey to King's Landing carries with it more than just political success. It brings proof that the new Targaryen approach to governance can succeed even in the most challenging circumstances, and that two dragons working together can achieve what solitary conquest never could. The fever comes like a thief in the night, stealing the strength from Daenerys Targaryen's limbs and clouding her violet eyes with exhaustion that sleep cannot cure. In the royal chambers of the Red Keep, the Dragon Queen lies pale against silk pillows, her silver hair spread across the bed like spilled moonlight, while Maester Qyburn tends to her with growing concern etched across his weathered features. Jon Snow sits at her bedside, his hand holding hers while he watches the shallow rise and fall of her breathing. 3 days have passed since the illness struck, and despite the Maester's best efforts, Daenerys grows weaker with each passing hour. The woman who conquered Slaver's Bay and reclaimed the Iron Throne now struggles to lift her head from the pillow. "The symptoms are unlike anything I've seen before," Qyburn admits quietly, setting aside another failed remedy. "Fever that comes and goes in waves, weakness that deepens despite rest, and a pallor that suggests something is affecting her blood itself." "What about the texts from the Citadel?" Jon asks, his voice hoarse from hours of discussion with various Maesters. Surely someone has documented similar cases. "Grand Maester Samwell is reviewing the archives as we speak," Qyburn replies. "If there is precedent for this condition, he will find it." Outside the royal chambers, the Red Keep buzzes with nervous energy as word of the Queen's illness spreads through whispered conversations and meaningful glances. In the throne room, Jon takes his place alone on the dragon throne for the first time since their coronation. The empty seat beside him, a stark reminder of the crisis facing the realm. "Your Highness," Tyrion announces as the daily court session begins, "Lord Royce of Runestone requests audience regarding grain shipments to the Vale." Jon nods, forcing himself to focus on the mundane but essential business of governance, even as his thoughts remain fixed on the woman fighting for her life 3 floors above. "Lord Royce, please present your petition." The morning passes in a steady stream of administrative matters, trade disputes, taxation issues, requests for royal intervention in local conflicts. Jon handles each case with growing confidence, his decisions reflecting the careful balance of justice and pragmatism that Daenerys has taught him. But observant courtiers note the tension in his shoulders and the way his eyes occasionally drift toward the chamber doors. It is during the afternoon session that the first challenge to his authority emerges. Lord Randall Tarley, recently pardoned and restored to his lands after swearing fealty to the new regime, approaches the throne with measured steps and calculating eyes. "Your Highness," he begins formally, "the realm grows concerned about the Queen's condition. Perhaps it would be wise to consider contingency plans." The throne room falls silent except for the whisper of silk and leather as nobles shift uncomfortably in their places. Jon's dark eyes fix on Tarly with the kind of steady gaze that has become his trademark in tense political moments. "What kind of contingency plans, Lord Tarly?" Jon asks quietly. "Should the Queen's illness prove prolonged," Tarly continues carefully, "the realm needs assurance of stable leadership. Perhaps a formal regency council until Her Grace recovers." Jon recognizes the suggestion for what it truly is, an attempt to limit his authority by surrounding him with advisors who might prove more amenable to traditional noble interests. Several other lords nod approvingly at Tarly's words, their faces carefully neutral, but their intentions clear. "The realm has stable leadership," Jon replies with quiet authority. "Queen Daenerys named me Prince Regent specifically to handle such situations. I require no additional counsel beyond the advisors already sworn to serve the crown." "Of course, Your Highness," Lord Tarly agrees smoothly. "But given your relative youth and the complexity of ruling 7 kingdoms, are you questioning my competence to govern, Lord Tarly?" Jon interrupts, his voice carrying an edge that makes several courtiers step back. "Because if so, I invite you to present specific concerns rather than vague insinuations." The challenge hangs in the air between them, and Lord Tarly realizes he has overplayed his hand. To press further would be open sedition, but to retreat now shows weakness before the assembled court. "I merely wish to serve the realm's interests," Tarly says finally, offering a bow that manages to be both respectful and grudging. "Then you will continue to do so from Brightwater Keep," Jon declares firmly. "The Crown appreciates your concern, but requires your service in the Reach rather than at court." The dismissal is politely phrased but unmistakably final. Lord Tarly bows again and withdraws, but his eyes promise that this challenge will not be the last. Around the throne room, other potential troublemakers reassess their plans as they realize the young Prince Regent will not be as easily manipulated as they hoped. Meanwhile, in the ancient library beneath the Red Keep, Samwell Tarly pores over manuscripts and scrolls with the desperate intensity of a man searching for a lifeline. The irony of seeking knowledge to save the woman his father openly questioned is not lost on him. But Sam's loyalty belongs to learning and justice rather than family politics. "Here," he breathes, his finger tracing lines of faded text in a tome written by Archmeister Marwyn 2 centuries earlier. "A fever that waxes and wanes, weakness that deepens despite rest, pallor that suggests corruption of the blood." The description matches Daenerys' symptoms perfectly, and Sam reads further with growing excitement and horror. The condition, called Dragon's Bane in the ancient text, was first documented during the reign of King Jaehaerys, affecting several members of the royal family before a cure was discovered. Sam rushes to the royal chambers, the heavy tome clutched in his arms as he takes the stairs 3 at a time. He bursts through the doors to find Jon still holding vigil at Daenerys' bedside, while Maester Qyburn checks her pulse with professional concern. "I've found it," Sam gasps, setting the book on the bedside table and opening it to the relevant passage. "Dragon's Bane, a condition that specifically affects those of Valyrian blood. It's caused by a rare poison that accumulates slowly in the system." "Poison?" Jon asks sharply, his hand moving to his sword hilt. "Not deliberate poisoning," Sam clarifies quickly. "It's a mineral that occurs naturally in certain stones used in ancient Valyrian construction. The Red Keep was built partially with stones brought from Dragonstone, and over time, tiny amounts of the poison can leach into water and food." Qyburn frowns, studying the text over Sam's shoulder. But why would it affect the Queen now, after months of residence? The text says it affects those who have strong bonds with dragons, Sam explains. The closer the bond, the more susceptible they become. As Daenerys' connection with Drogon has deepened, she's become more vulnerable, Jon finishes grimly. What's the cure? Sam points to another passage in the ancient book. A compound made from herbs that grow only in the summer isles, combined with powdered dragonglass and spring water that has never touched metal. It must be administered during the new moon, while the patient lies on stone that has never known dragon flame. How long do we have? Jon asks, though he dreads the answer. According to this, the poison reaches its peak potency during the 3rd week of illness, Sam replies soberly. After that, he doesn't need to finish. Jon stands abruptly, his mind already working through the logistics of obtaining the cure components. How long to gather these materials? The herbs can be obtained from traders in King's Landing, Qyburn suggests. The dragonglass we have in abundance from Dragonstone. As for the stone requirement, the sept, Jon says suddenly. The great sept of Baelor was built before dragons returned to Westeros. Its stones have never known dragon flame. Over the following days, Jon divides his time between governing the realm and overseeing preparations for Daenerys' treatment. His competence in both arenas surprises even his supporters, as he demonstrates the kind of decisive leadership that inspires confidence rather than merely commanding obedience. When Lord Manderley attempts to suggest that northern independence might be reconsidered given the Queen's condition, Jon's response is swift and uncompromising. The North swore fealty to House Targaryen through me, he declares in open court. That oath stands regardless of the Queen's health, and anyone who suggests otherwise questions my honor as both Stark and Targaryen. The rebuke silences not just Manderley, but several other lords who had been testing the waters of potential rebellion. Jon's display of authority makes it clear that he is not a weakened regent to be manipulated, but a dragon prince fully capable of ruling alone. On the night of the new moon, they carry Daenerys to the great sept of Baelor under cover of darkness. The ancient stones receive her with silent dignity, as Sam and Qyburn administer the cure according to the Archmeister's instructions. Jon kneels beside her throughout the long hours of the ritual, his voice steady as he reads passages from Valyrian texts about the bond between dragons and their riders. Dawn breaks as the fever finally breaks, Daenerys' eyes opening clear and focused for the first time in weeks. Her first word is Jon's name, spoken with the gratitude of someone who knows they have been saved by love as much as by knowledge. How long? She asks weakly, as they help her sit up against the ancient stone altar. 2 weeks, Jon replies, taking her hand in both of his. Long enough for the realm to see that House Targaryen endures whether 1 dragon or 2 sits the throne. And did they accept your authority? She asks, though her slight smile suggests she already knows the answer. Some tested it, Jon admits, but they learned quickly that the student has indeed been paying attention to his lessons. As they prepare to return to the Red Keep, Daenerys leans heavily on Jon's arm, but insists on walking rather than being carried. You've proven something important these past weeks, she tells him quietly. Not just to the realm, but to yourself. You're ready, Jon. When my time comes to step aside, the crown will pass to someone truly worthy of wearing it. Above them, 2 dragons circle through the morning sky, their roars echoing across King's Landing in triumph and relief. The crisis has passed, but it has left both rulers changed, Daenerys with renewed appreciation for her mortality, and Jon with absolute confidence in his ability to carry the Targaryen legacy forward alone when destiny demands it. The war galley approaches King's Landing under a banner that makes every guard on the city walls reach for their weapons. The 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen, flies above the Golden Company's war elephant, creating a sight that sends runners sprinting toward the Red Keep with news that will shake the foundations of the restored dynasty. In the throne room, Jon Snow receives the report with carefully controlled expression, though Daenerys can see the tension gathering in his shoulders as he processes the implications. She sits beside him on the dragon throne, still pale from her recent illness, but determined to present a united front against whatever challenge approaches their reign. A pretender, Tyrion summarizes grimly, consulting the hastily scrawled intelligence report. A young man calling himself Aegon Targaryen, sixth of his name, son of Prince Rhaegar and Princess Elia Martell. The Golden Company supports his claim and has provided him with ships and sellswords. Impossible, Daenerys says immediately. Elia's children were murdered during the sack of King's Landing. I saw their bodies presented to my father. So did everyone else, Jon agrees quietly, but his voice carries undertones of uncertainty that make both Tyrion and Daenerys look at him sharply. But if he has the Golden Company's support, someone believes his claim has merit. The great doors of the throne room open to admit a herald wearing the colors of the Golden Company, cloth of gold and steel, with the war elephant prominent on his surcoat. Behind him walks a young man who draws every eye in the chamber with his striking appearance. He is perhaps 25 years of age, with the silver-gold hair and violet eyes that mark Targaryen blood. His features blend the sharp beauty of Valyria with the olive skin and dark-eyed intensity that speaks of Dornish heritage. He moves with unconscious grace and carries himself with the confidence of someone raised to believe he is destined to rule. "Your Grace," the herald announces formally, "I present Aegon of House Targaryen, sixth of his name, rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms and heir to the Iron Throne." The young man steps forward and offers a bow that manages to be respectful without being subservient. When he straightens, his violet eyes meet Jon's with frank assessment. "Your Highness," he says, his voice cultured and carrying only the faintest trace of an associate accent. "I understand you also claim the name Aegon Targaryen." "How? Interesting." Jon rises from the dragon throne, and for a moment the two young men study each other with the intensity of wolves circling before a fight. The resemblance between them is unmistakable. Both have the Targaryen look. Both carry themselves with royal bearing. Both possess the kind of presence that draws attention and commands respect. "I claim nothing," Jon replies steadily. "I am who my blood and parentage make me. The question is whether you can say the same." "My parentage is well documented," the pretender responds with a slight smile. "Prince Rhaegar Targaryen and Princess Elia Martell of Dorne. Born in King's Landing, spirited away during the sack by loyal retainers, raised in exile in Essos until the time came to reclaim my birthright." "Convenient," Daenerys observes coolly, "and convenient that you appear now when House Targaryen has restored its power, rather than during the years when Robert Baratheon hunted dragons across the world." "I was being prepared," the young man replies smoothly. "Educated in statecraft, trained in warfare, taught the responsibilities that come with royal blood. Unlike some, I was raised knowing I would someday sit the Iron Throne." The barb is clearly aimed at Jon, and several courtiers shift uncomfortably as they sense the tension building between the rival claimants. But Jon's response surprises everyone present. "You're right," he says simply. "I wasn't raised to rule. I was raised as a bastard, believing myself the son of Ned Stark. I learned of my true parentage only recently, and I've had to study quickly to become worthy of the responsibility." "Then you acknowledge that my claim predates yours?" the pretender presses. I acknowledge that if you are truly who you claim to be, your claim would indeed have precedence. Jon agrees, and Daenerys looks at him sharply. The question is how we determine the truth. Dragons know their own blood, Daenerys interjects firmly. If this young man is truly Targaryen, let him prove it as Jon did. Let him approach our dragons and see if they accept him. The pretender's confidence wavers slightly, but he nods agreement. Very well, but I would suggest a more formal test than simply approaching beasts that have been trained to obey their current riders. What do you propose? Jon asks, though his tone suggests he already suspects the answer. Trial by combat, the pretender declares, his voice carrying to every corner of the throne room. The gods will decide between us. Let each claimant choose a champion, and let the outcome determine who has the stronger right to rule. Murmurs ripple through the assembled courtiers as they realize they are witnessing a moment that will be recorded in history books for generations to come. Two men claiming the same name and the same throne, each bearing the look of dragons, each supported by different factions and arguments. I accept, Jon says before Daenerys can object, though he sees the alarm in her eyes. When and where? Tomorrow at dawn, the pretender replies promptly, in the dragon pit, where Targaryen kings once watched their dragons fight. Let our champions settle this ancient amphitheatre, and let the dragons witness the outcome. The remainder of the day passes in preparation and tense consultation. In their private chambers, Daenerys argues fiercely against the trial by combat, while Jon prepares his armor with steady hands. "This is madness," she says, pacing before the windows that overlook the city. "You've proven yourself 12 times over. You don't need to risk your life to satisfy the claims of some pretender." "If I refuse the trial, it suggests I doubt my own legitimacy," Jon replies reasonably. "And if he truly is Aegon, son of Rhaegar and Elia, then his claim is stronger than mine. I can't rule effectively with that shadow hanging over the throne. And if he's an imposter, using the resemblance and a fabricated story to seize power, then the truth will come out," Jon says, with quiet certainty. One way or another. Dawn breaks grey and misty over King's Landing as thousands gather in the ancient dragon pit for the trial by combat. The great amphitheatre, built by Targaryen kings to showcase their dragons' power, now hosts a different kind of spectacle as two claimants prepare to settle their dispute with steel and blood. The pretender's champion is Sir Rolly Duckfield, a knight of the Golden Company, known throughout Essos for his skill with sword and shield. Jon has chosen to fight for himself, reasoning that a man's claim to kingship should be proven by his own hand rather than delegated to others. As the two combatants take their positions in the center of the pit, both dragons, Drogon and Rhaegal, circle overhead. The great beasts seem agitated by the tension below, their roars echoing off the ancient stone walls as they sense the importance of what is about to unfold. The fight begins with careful circling as each combatant tests the other's defenses. Sir Rolly is skilled and experienced, his movements precise and economical, but Jon has been trained by some of the finest swordsmen in Westeros, and has learned from dragons what it means to fight with purpose beyond mere survival. The battle turns when both dragons suddenly descend into the pit, landing on opposite sides of the combat area. The crowd gasps as Drogon positions himself behind Jon, while Rhaegal takes his place at Jon's right side. Neither dragon shows the slightest interest in the pretender or his champion. "Even the dragons choose Jon," Daenerys breathes from the royal box, her words carrying clearly in the sudden silence. The sight of both dragons supporting Jon seems to unnerve Sir Rolly, whose next attack is too aggressive and leaves him overextended. Jon's counterattack is swift and decisive, Longclaw finding the gap between breastplate and helm with the precision of someone who has learned that mercy is sometimes cruelty postponed. As Sir Rolly falls, the Pretender leaps to his feet in the viewing area, his composure finally cracking. "This proves nothing," he shouts. "Dragons can be trained, loyalty can be bought." But his protest dies as both Drogon and Rhaegal turn their great heads toward him, their golden eyes holding unmistakable judgment. When they breathe fire in unison, the flames pass harmlessly around Jon, but create a barrier between the Pretender and any possible escape. "I yield," the young man says finally, his shoulders sagging with defeat. "I yield the field and withdraw my claim." Later, in the privacy of the throne room, the truth emerges under careful questioning. The Pretender is indeed skilled and trained, indeed bears a strong resemblance to Targaryen features, but he is the son of Lyseni nobility rather than Prince Rhaegar. The Golden Company, desperate to return to Westeros and reclaim properties lost during Robert's rebellion, had manufactured the claim and supported it with careful preparation and coaching. "You fought well," Jon tells the young man, as guards prepare to escort him to exile rather than execution. "In another life, you might have made a good king." "And you fight with honor," the Pretender replies. Perhaps the Iron Throne is in good hands, after all." As evening falls over King's Landing, Jon and Daenerys stand together on the Red Keep's highest balcony, watching their dragons soar through the darkening sky. The final challenge to their reign has been met and overcome, and the succession seems more secure than ever. "No more pretenders," Daenerys says with satisfaction. "No more questions about your legitimacy. The dragons have chosen, and the gods have spoken through trial by combat." "And you?" Jon asks quietly. "Do you still have doubts about the wisdom of naming me your heir?" Daenerys takes his hand, her fingers intertwining with his as naturally as their destinies have become intertwined. "Never," she says firmly. "You've proven yourself worthy of the crown in every possible way. When my time comes to step aside, I'll do so knowing the realm will be in the hands of a true dragon." Above them, Drogon and Rhaegal call to each other across the night sky, their voices carrying the promise of a dynasty restored and secured for generations to come. The gardens of the Red Keep bloom with summer flowers as the 4th year of the Targaryen restoration draws to its close. Roses from the Reach mingle with Dornish blood oranges and northern winter roses, creating a tapestry of color that speaks to the unity Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen have forged across the 7 kingdoms. In the shade of an ancient oak tree, the 2 dragons sit in comfortable companionship, reviewing reports that speak of prosperity and peace rather than rebellion and war. "The harvest reports from the Riverlands are exceptional this year," Daenerys observes, setting aside a scroll sealed with the trout of House Tully. "Lord Edmure writes that the grain stores are so full they're offering surplus to any kingdom that needs it." Jon nods approvingly as he reviews similar correspondence from across the realm. At 28, he has grown into his role as Prince Regent with a confidence that comes not from arrogance, but from experience earned through fire and trial. His dark hair shows the first threads of silver at the temples, and his bearing carries the authority of someone who has been tested by dragons and found worthy. "The crown's finances are strong enough to purchase the surplus and distribute it to regions still recovering from the wars," he suggests. "It's the kind of investment that builds long-term loyalty while addressing immediate needs." "Spoken like a true king," Daenerys replies with satisfaction. At 28 herself, she has found peace with the idea of eventually stepping back from the throne. The silver in her hair has spread, but her violet eyes remain sharp with intelligence and the hard-won wisdom of someone who has seen power's true cost. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Tyrion Lannister, whose steps are lighter these days as he approaches rulers who govern through consensus rather than command. The hand of the Queen carries with him the easy confidence of someone whose advice is sought and valued. "Your Grace, Your Highness," he greets them formally. Then his voice becomes more personal. The delegation from Winterfell has arrived. Lady Sansa, Lord Bran, and Lady Arya are waiting in the throne room, along with what appears to be half the northern nobility. Jon's face brightens with genuine joy at the news of his family's arrival. The Stark siblings have made the journey south for the great celebration planned to mark the 4th anniversary of the Targaryen restoration, bringing with them lords and ladies who have become steadfast allies of the new regime. "How do they look?" Jon asks, his royal dignity momentarily replaced by the excitement of a brother eager to see siblings he has not embraced in over a year. "Sansa appears every inch the Lady of Winterfell," Tyrion reports with amusement. "Arya looks like she's planning to test every guard in the Red Keep against her blade work. And Bran, well, Bran looks as mysteriously omniscient as ever." The reunion in the throne room is warm, but carries undertones of deeper political significance. When Sansa embraces Jon, she whispers in his ear, "You've changed. You carry yourself like a king now, not like someone apologizing for wearing a crown. I've learned that authority earned through service is different from power taken through conquest," Jon replies quietly. "Daenerys taught me that lesson well." Arya's greeting is characteristically direct. "So when do we get to see you actually rule instead of just talking about it?" she asks with the ghost of her old teasing smile. "Right now, if you'd like," Jon answers, gesturing toward the dragon throne, where petitioners wait with the daily business of governing 7 kingdoms. Today's agenda includes trade disputes, marriage contracts, and requests for royal intervention in local conflicts. What follows is a masterclass in the governing style Jon and Daenerys have developed over their years of partnership. Each petitioner is heard with attention. Questions are asked that get to the heart of problems rather than merely addressing symptoms, and solutions are crafted that serve both immediate needs and long-term stability. Sansa watches with particular interest as her brother navigates a complex dispute between rival trading companies, finding a resolution that satisfies both parties while establishing precedent for future cases. Arya pays attention to how security concerns are handled, noting the balance between protection and accessibility that marks the new regime's approach. But it is Bran whose observation proves most significant. "You've created something new," he tells Jon and Daenerys during a private moment between sessions. "Not just a restoration of Targaryen rule, but an evolution of what kingship can be." "What do you mean?" Daenerys asks, though her tone suggests she already understands. "Previous Targaryen kings ruled through the dragon's strength and their own will," Bran explains in his measured way. "You rule through institutions that can outlast individual rulers, through partnerships that make the crown stronger rather than more isolated. You've built a kingdom that can survive succession because it's based on systems rather than personalities." That evening, as the Red Keep hosts a feast celebrating the anniversary and the Stark family reunion, Jon finds himself reflecting on Bran's words. The great hall fills with laughter and music as lords and ladies from across the 7 kingdoms share tables that would have been divided by suspicion and rivalry just a few years earlier. "You're thinking about succession," Daenerys observes, joining him at the high table as entertainers perform songs celebrating the restoration of peace to the realm. "I'm thinking about legacy," Jon corrects gently. "About what we leave behind when our time comes to step aside." "And what conclusions have you reached?" she asks, though her slight smile suggests she knows the direction of his thoughts. That succession is less important than institutions, Jon replies. That the kingdom we've built can survive individual rulers because it's founded on principles rather than personalities. Which brings us to an important conversation we've been avoiding, Daenerys says, her voice becoming more serious. The question of your marriage and the continuation of the Targaryen line. Jon's expression grows thoughtful as he considers the weight of dynastic responsibility. Over the past months, marriage negotiations have been broached by several great houses eager to align themselves with the restored dragons, but both he and Daenerys have been careful not to rush such a momentous decision. The Tyrells have suggested their youngest daughter, he muses. The Martells have made overtures regarding Princess Arianne's cousin. Even the Starks have hinted that strengthening the bond between our houses might be beneficial. And what do you think? Daenerys asks. Not as a prince considering political alliances, but as Jon Snow thinking about the woman he wants to spend his life with? The question hangs between them as music and laughter continue around their private conversation. Jon has grown into his role as Dragon Prince, but the heart of the man remains unchanged from the bastard who valued honor and loyalty above all else. I think, he says finally, that any woman who marries me needs to understand that she's not just wedding a man, but joining a dynasty that comes with dragons and the responsibility for 7 kingdoms. It should be someone who can be a true partner in rule, not just a wife for show. Wise words, Daenerys agrees, and practical ones. We'll take our time with the decision and ensure that when you do marry, it strengthens rather than complicates the kingdom we've built together. As the feast continues late into the night, both rulers move among their guests with the easy confidence of people secure in their authority and comfortable with their subjects. The great hall that once echoed with the paranoid whispers of Cersei's court now rings with genuine celebration and hope for the future. Later, as the Red Keep settles into peaceful quiet, Jon and Daenerys stand together on their favorite balcony overlooking King's Landing. The city spreads before them like a carpet of stars, with lights twinkling in windows where families sleep safely under the protection of dragons. Do you ever regret it? Jon asks quietly. Choosing to share power instead of ruling alone. Never, Daenerys replies without hesitation. I've learned that the Iron Throne was never meant to be sat upon by one person. The kingdom is too large, the responsibilities too great, the burden too heavy for any single ruler to bear alone. Above them, Rhaegal and Drogon call to each other across the night sky, their voices carrying the contentment of dragons who have found their proper place in the world. The great beasts wheel through the darkness with lazy grace, their bronze and black scales catching starlight as they patrol the skies above their kingdom. What's next for us? Jon asks, watching the dragons with the fond attention of someone who has learned to see them as family rather than weapons. Tomorrow, we continue the work of ruling, Daenerys answers. Next month, we hold the Great Council to review the new laws and make adjustments based on what we've learned. Next year, we begin seriously considering when and how to transition primary authority to you while I focus on advisory roles. And someday, Jon presses, someday we step back and watch the kingdom we built together continue to prosper under new leadership, Daenerys says with quiet satisfaction. Someday, we prove that dragons can create lasting peace as well as swift conquest. The wind carries the scent of the sea and the sound of the city settling into sleep. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls the midnight hour, marking the end of another day in the 4th year of the restoration and the beginning of whatever comes next. 2 dragons have found each other across the years, and the trials, creating something stronger than either could have achieved alone. The Game of Thrones has ended, replaced by the art of governance. The Seven Kingdoms prosper under rulers who understand that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to build and the courage to share that burden with those worthy of trust. Fire and ice have found their balance, and the realm has never been more secure. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share,